So, uh, I wanted to make this video like, I don't know when, but so I see the rise of all these anti-AEW people in the wrestling internet community, right? So I wanted to expose all these anti-AEW wrestling channels and videos that's saying that this is the reason why wrestling is dead. The death of wrestling started when Vince McMahon bought out WCW. It started back in 2001, or I forgot when it was, 2001 or 2002. See, when you didn't have an alternative and WCW was the place to watch different wrestling, you saw the creativity of Vince McMahon and company based off what they were showing, based off how they was losing to WCW back in the day. The creation of the luchadors, how WWE wasn't pushing all the right people, and how, just like today, in the times of today, is that when a pro wrestler leaves a bad environment where politics rule and one person decides everybody's role in the company, a lot of people flourished in WCW until ex-WWE guys with egos came in there and destroyed it. Kevin Nash, rest in peace, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan. These dudes came in there, booked themselves to win, and literally crushed the entire company. Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, all these different people that were dragging on NWO and all these other companies, it destroyed WCW. A lot of people forgot that there were so many different promotions back in the early 60s and 70s. That's what kept wrestling alive. Not one company. And wrestling was about seeing different people and how they was pushed. How Hulk Hogan knew that he can get away with doing 3 moves in WWE. But when he went to New Japan, he pulled out a full arsenal to wrestle in New Japan. Because he had more respect for the Japanese audience and respect for the Japanese than he had for Vince McMahon. Everybody walked over Vince, right? So, wait, let me put that on there. Okay. So, you have all these muscle heads and these people who trying to shit on AEW, and AEW was created. Let me see here. AEW was created in 2019. If you go to these anti-AEW channels, a lot of them was created in 2019 or 18. Where was their videos at back then? Where was their videos at back then about WWE before AEW was a thing? Where was they at? Like, I don't get it. So you come out the woodwork talking about you love wrestling and trying to shit on the fans, But you have no videos of you talking down to WWE and the kind of stuff that made people not want to watch WWE any at all and wanting an alternative. Like, I can pretty much show you certain fans who pretty much jumped out the woodwork when they jumped out the woodwork when AEW became a thing, right? So let me talk, and I'm gonna go on this channel that I'm gonna show y'all that basically it's a funny thing that all these anti-AEW people were just now creating content for their wrestling channels when hating on AEW was a thing. So I'm gonna show you things that killed pro wrestling, that put it on life support way before AEW ever was created. Chris Benoit's situation. One, Chris Benoit's situation. So, when Chris Benoit did what he did, there was talks about pro wrestling and what's going on behind the scenes. This was when every single muscle head that these dudes like to promote and say they're better than the smaller guys were all doing drugs. They were all doing drugs. They were all doing performance enhancers. And this is when WWE at the time didn't care about their own wrestlers' habits. This was at the time when every single pro wrestler was dropping like flies left and right because they had to keep themselves in peak condition. That's something that these muscle heads are never going to talk about, is that the wrestling in general is cleaner than it ever was because all of the muscle heads are gone. And all of the egotistical pieces of crap who treated everybody like junk back in the day are all pretty much gone. You don't have a super large politics like you had back in the day. You don't have a whole bunch of muscle heads making pro wrestling look bad by juicing themselves up in order for them to look good. Because you can tell who's natty or not. I learned that from, forgot his name, Nick Strength and Power. And a lot of other channels who exposed a lot of pro wrestlers for what they pretty much exposed them for, basically using performance enhancing. Your boy Roman Reigns was using performance enhancing. That's why he got hit with one of the drug uses. He was using it to keep himself focused. See, Chris Benoit literally single-handedly changed how WWE did things. They didn't want that kind of PR to any of their wrestlers, so they had to tighten down and act like they were on the case of people who was using performance enhancers. But then I'm looking, Randy Orton was busted multiple times for performance enhancing. Brock Lesnar used performance enhancing. He was booked for what is it? In UFC when he lost his win. It's funny to me that these musclehead guys who talking about smaller guys are never going to talk about how most of these guys are not natural. And this is coming from somebody who got a power lifting background and somewhat bodybuilding. It takes a long time for you to get that big And it takes even more for you to maintain that because you have to always feed your body for it to keep that shape and keep that form. So 9 times out of 10, you're going to have to keep either working out or you have to work out or you're going to have to use performance enhancing to increase your recovery. Because if you're working out every single day, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna basically break down your body to a point where you're gonna cause injury, especially if you're in the industry taking bumps. And back then, before they was doing chair shots on your back, they was doing chair shots on your head because they wanted to make it realistic as possible. A lot of the companies didn't care what happened to the wrestlers, even though they should have put pads on. They should have put pads on the chairs. And they should have had screw where the chairs would break apart every time the person hit the chair. But they made it back. The whole point of pro wrestling is being a stunt devil at the same time being an actor. An actor and a stunt devil at the same time. And doing theatrics in the middle of the ring. Right? So I'm almost there. I'm gonna show you this. I'm gonna show you this video. I'm gonna show you one of the channels who go against AEW, and ever since he started going against AEW, his views rise. So oh wow, man. Oh wow. This dude don't have no content at all of WWE. All he have is what I thought he was gonna have. Oh man, I was absolutely right. Okay. I'm getting a little excited. Let me. I knew these dudes are full of trash, man. They're trash bags, man. They take on wrestling and going after AEW and going after certain fans is just them getting views. Them getting views. Just them getting views. But let's go. Let me go right here. So, Chris Benoit's situation pretty much exposed the unsafe conditions in pro wrestling. Because you had this guy who was taking headshot after headshot, doing head reels and doing headbutts and doing an unsafe move that will end up hurting you and doing long-term damage to your brain. So they had to change everything to the point where a lot of people had to do safer moves in order to accommodate certain people so they can have longevity. But it basically exposed a Vince McMahon as being pretty much a piece of shit who didn't care about his pro wrestlers and only cared about him making money off of them. So it pretty much made them go back on the drawing board and try to make money in other different ways that didn't involve you dragging your wrestler and milking him for what they was. But it still didn't change. They just changed their strategies after Benoit got killed, after Benoit did what he did. So Benoit pretty much changed pro wrestling, made it more PG, exposed the wrestlers. I mean, the wrestling, all the wrestling on the kind of conditions that they treat people in the biggest company in the world. And everybody started to look at that and everybody started to take notes. This is when people started to be more safer with their workers because that's what they're supposed to do. And it exposed people for being unsafe with their workers and basically turning around and damaging their people. But they still was they still was getting away with it. You know, unfortunate situation with Daphne and how she got hurt and all these hardcore matches and all this other stuff. It was little bit by little bit. But overall it was pretty much exposed what pro wrestler's life was like being a pro wrestler. So Chris Benoit pretty much put wrestling on a halt and changed almost everybody from what they did, except certain promotions where people really didn't care about them like that. when WWE bought WCW, so it made WWE the only place to watch wrestling and the only place for idiots to say that pro wrestling only matters in WWE. So we had to watch everything that WWE put out because somehow some way WWE was the only wrestling game in town, and you had to need the views, and you had to. It was all about what the casuals liked and what they draw to, because there was people who were so insecure that they were embarrassed to be pro wrestling fans because they thought it wasn't a cool thing. Oh, my bad. Sorry, I'm gonna change that. So the WWE pretty much cost the job of many people that love pro wrestling, grew up in pro wrestling, and didn't have no place to go. You heard from Sting, you heard from all types of people, and everybody who had a fan base, which I'm gonna go break that down, they all left because they was fans of a certain wrestler. And now they couldn't enjoy an alternative. So a lot of fans, millions of people, left pro wrestling when WWE bought WCW. So it was already in the ground. This is when certain promotions like a TNA or certain other companies was opening up. When ECW went out of business. Well, ECW was the alternative trash wrestling, but it had some good storylines. Not really all pro wrestling, but they had good stories, and you didn't have to see ring holds and wrist locks. It was down and dirty street level fighting. You didn't have to be the guy with the big body or the guy who looked good. You had normal dudes fighting it out in the middle of the ring with weapons and making it even for you step in the ring with so-called big dudes. It was more of a enjoyable watching for people who enjoyed the everyday person jumping in the ring. And you can be closer to being an ECW guy than a WWE guy or WCW guy. So it was like, okay, we have something to watch. And once WCW went out of ECW went out of business, and they had to go to WWE, this is when how bad it became, to the point where it's like, whoa, we don't have anything no more. It sucks. They're not pushing stars. All they pushing is a bunch of muscle heads. And then they were playing with people's lives, telling them to juice up, in order to get a spot in pro wrestling. While other people was politicking their way to the top, and it wasn't as good. John Cena's 10-something years of his reign. So, we had to deal with Mr. Superman in every single facet of pro wrestling. Now it's, oh wait, John Cena's beating this guy. The funny thing about John Cena, he wasn't that good. The only reason why he had good storylines is because some of his builds. But the fact is, he was the only time that he was actually good and he had an actual character is when he was running around talking about word life. I remember his matches with Eddie Guerrero. I remember his matches with Brock Lesnar. I remember some of his matches when he first started out. Then when he became Super Cena, they pushed him to the moon, and they didn't let anyone else, get anywhere else in the wrestling community. I mean, the wrestling. Everybody got fed John Cena. It was some of the worst things it was some of the worst wrestling that I ever seen in my life. I left WWE back in 2006 to 2010, I think, because John Cena and Edge keep pushing, John Cena and Edge and Randy Orton and versus John Cena and all that other stuff. I would go quickly look over there, but TNA was a better product. See, that's what you need, an alternative. You can't just have one. You can't just have one company doing all this and nobody's challenging them, because the company's not going to get better. And that was the point of all the competition, was giving the fans things that they wanted to see, not things that WWE wanted to put out for them. But these idiots, they want you to stick back and watch WWE, or just keep going to the past and milking the past over and over and over again. Like you really want to watch old matches, keep watching old matches, and tell you, oh, keep watching those matches. So, 10 years of John Cena dominating and pretty much making every single wrestling fan miserable, because most people stopped watching pro wrestling because of John Cena. A lot of them. They were tired of him being pushed to the moon. They were tired of him dominating. They were tired of him beating every single body that they had just for John Cena, just for him not to go heel. And then the insulting part is that it was John Cena who didn't push himself to be heel. It was John Cena who basically destroyed tons and tons of people's career, and then he left him with the Hollywood after he talked down to The Rock for going to Hollywood. Now he's trying to get a position with The Rock, just like The Rock, and turn around and pretend that we didn't even know. We forgot that he was talking trash about part-timers, but he's a part-timer himself now. This is the joke about it. This is the joking thing about John Cena and his bullcrap, and how he bowed down to China at some point, or at one point, because he didn't want to lose his deals. So it wasn't him being this so-called, this morally sound guy, and he cares about this and cares about that. He was 10 times worse than Hulk Hogan. At least Hogan put a couple people over. This dude, John Cena, didn't put that many people over. I had more respect for Randy Orton because Randy Orton was the one that put over Mark Henry. One of my favorite runs in WWE that kept me watching some point was Mark Henry's run as the Hall of Pain. And nobody gives Randy Orton credit for putting Mark Henry over and losing. But, okay. Too much backstage politics. So, this comes from the fact that every single body seemed to have some kind of politics to them being booked themselves. You see it with Charlotte Flair. You see it with Ronda Rousey. You see it with Triple H back in the day. And I'm going to get to him. You saw with so many people booking themselves to win matches and do all this and did this. And they just went and used their power backstage. John Cena did the same thing. And it hurt the brand. It hurt the company. It made people not want to watch it no more. But somehow, some way, these idiots are talking about AEW killing the wrestling business and the Marks are killing the rest of the business. No. We're seeing the same dude for 10 years being pushed. We see people who were supposed to win titles losing in big matches, and we're supposed to be like, oh, I love this wrestling company. I love this wrestling. Because big guys are being pushed. And then the oversaturation of big guys, it destroyed the perception of like, we're not walking around seeing a whole bunch of huge guys in the real world. And you know how people will handle big guys in the real world? Nobody out here fighting big guys no more. And then not only that, you saw MMA. We exposed the big guys already. It's a lot of smaller guys, heavyweight guys that trash Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar got beat by Randy Couture, 50-year-old dude and Randy Couture. Are you serious? Same thing with Cain Velasquez. He beat Brock Lesnar. And I forgot his other name, dude that I used to watch in Ultimate Fighting House. Are you serious? Y'all thought Brock Lesnar was undefeated? In MMA? Brock Lesnar. You think he was undefeated in MMA? Brock Lesnar was he was the most overrated guy in wrestling times, more overrated than Goldberg. Back then it was actually respectable back then, him being, this good guy. But what he did with New Japan and how he always runs from real fighting? Like, look, are you serious? This dude, every time he loses, he walks away from something. Every time he doesn't get his way, he walks away from something. He's just a paycheck. He got beaten by Cain Velasquez. He got beaten by Frank Mir. Yeah, Frank Mir. I remember, Frank Mir. And then he got easy matches with certain people that wasn't ready. And I know the booking. I know the booking of UFC. I used to watch UFC even back in the day, and they used to book people the wrong way. Like my boy Uriah Faber got called in when he was practically almost past his prime when he was in WEC. And they should have called him in when he was white hot. And how they did BJ Penn. And how they did Randy Couture. They didn't put opponents in Randy Couture's face that could beat him until he got real old and they start putting him in there when he started getting cocky. That's what they do. They build you up and then they chop you down with fighters they know that can beat you. So they play around with people's expectations of fighters. Same thing that happened with WWE. The most politics I ever seen was in WWE. I ain't gonna say New Japan don't have politics, because they do. I ain't gonna say TNA don't have politics, because they do. But when I look at a TNA or Impact Wrestling right now, these guys always seem to push every single body down the card. Up the card, the top of the card, and down at the bottom of the card. They give everybody a chance. In WWE, they only give certain people a chance. I always ask myself, why is Alexa Bliss being pushed? Why Dana Brooke is still in WWE? And then I think about I forgot her name. She was dating what her name is? Eva? Whatever her name is. And then I start thinking about all the relationships and all the stuff that Vince McMahon made the women do back in the day, kissing his ass and he was able to make out with all types of women on social media. I mean, not on social media. Make out with all types of women on live TV, and that something told me that he was having his fun with some of the women backstage. And I think that Alexa Bliss kept her position because she give Vince McMahon the old. That's what she does. It ain't no way that I can't, because she's useless. Ain't no way that any other woman in WWE could be out of action all the time. She does not bring any real value to the company. Her wrestling is subpar. She didn't learn any new moves from her being an NXT, well, from her back from when she was valet and when she was wrestling. I thought she was going to get better after she got on the main roster, and that was years ago. But hey, you want to say that Alexa Bliss is there because she brings in dough. The WWE pretty much fired all these people because they don't need talent. This is why they... I'll get to that. I'll get to that because it's down my list. But all the backstage politics, Dana Brooke and all these other people, you think that I don't know that they're sitting there sleeping with Vince McMahon or sleeping with some of the writers or something like that? You think that I don't know that? WWE hide it now. They hides a lot. But there's a reason why certain females are not being pushed, because they're not sleeping with nobody. Or they're not attracted to Vince or none of the higher ups. So it's too much backstage politics that gets in the way of good product and good storylines. Okay. Push of the Bella Twins. Jesus, man. Woo. The Bella Twins was absolutely horrible. They was probably the worst thing that you probably ever seen in pro wrestling today. They were the worst things that you could probably look at. And I'm supposed to what? Watch them? Then they lied and said that was the reason the women's revolution was matter. When AJ Lee was the one that did it. And TNA, if you want to go back, TNA was the one who started it all. So I had to watch the Bella Twins with their subpar wrestling be in these matches and storylines being pushed to the moon. Finding out they slept their way to the top. One slept with one of the biggest stars in the WWE, in John Cena. The other slept with a new star as in Daniel Bryan. So she slept with Daniel Bryan because she's different than her sister. So she probably generally loved Daniel Bryan. But to me, I think she probably went with Daniel Bryan because Daniel Bryan was a good wrestler and she could learn moves from him. You could see some of her moves improving, but she didn't know how to execute them when she got with Daniel Bryan. And that's what some of these women do in the pro wrestling. They will go with a certain guy in order to improve their skills, and then they'll dump him. The Bella Twins were overhyped mess. And that got a lot of people walking away from female wrestling and not take it seriously. Now, if people didn't know about Stardom or TNA, the women's revolution in TNA, then they all thought that women wrestling sucked because of the Bella Twins. The relaunch of ECW, one of the worst things they ever did. So, you had a whole bunch of big guys. You had Big Show being the ECW champion, which I thought was a good idea at the first, but then the way they executed it was stupid. All these WWE guys in ECW, and it became so dull and boring. They was trying to bring ECW fans back. That's what One Night Stand was for. Was a big pop for former ECW fans for us to pay the money for the pay-per-views when they had the pay-per-view system. But they kept playing with the concepts, playing with the concepts, playing with the concepts, playing with the concepts. And then they ran all the ECW fans out. See, for these idiots who talk about marks and, they're trying something different. They just want to see flips and dives. They know who pays the bills. They know that the ECW small guys flipping around, those crowd, the ECW nerd guys who live in their mom's basement and all this other shit that you keep saying, they put their money where their mouth is. They don't sit around talking about old wrestling and then talking about how bad the WWE is. They still paying. Even if some of the matches are bad, they're paying the price for these matches because they love wrestling. Unlike you're part-time wrestling fans. So, of course, you're not going to pay and you're not going to put no bills and not going to help support these pro wrestlers because that's what it's all about. You're going to sit here and talk about how small they are or this and this and that. But I ask these same people, was you out there paying for every single WWE pay-per-view back then? And then I'm like, and they like, no, I was busy. I was going out. Wait. So why you have something to say now? If AEW fans follow a pro wrestler, they actually follow it. I would rather respect the person who follows it because these are the same people who won't talk to a person who don't know what they're talking about in the sports team. But they are going to sit back and try to shit on pro wrestling fans because pro wrestling fans actually take the time into looking at a wrestler's career and following it until they get to AEW or know about what they did on the indie scene. Okay, sure. Whatever you say. But the ECW relaunch literally made everybody who wanted to come back to watch wrestling leave pro wrestling in general and just stay within the indie circle. The Invasion storyline. This was after WCW. This one made millions and 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 millions of fans leave. Because they thought that their favorite wrestler was going to get some good times. Right? Okay. They put the McMahons at the helm and kept pushing them to this stupid storyline, right? So this invasion angle generated 700,000. But a lot of people left this alone because the alliance was always losing to the WWE. These are people who came from other companies, and I'm gonna go down to that level, go down to that point. Vince McMahon shitted on all the work that every single body did in other pro wrestling. From Diamond Dallas Page, from Booker T, they didn't acknowledge anything that WWE did. Anything. Which is just, it was some of the worst things you probably can see in your life. Where it was so cool at first. And then eventually it just turned to absolutely trash. It was trash. Like, you had top sellers that could have pretty much been top stars and carried the company even to this day. Booker T, the Dudley Boys, they used the Dudley Boys somewhat good. They had a good run in WWE. Diamond Dallas Page could have been some kind of cool. You know, Gregory Helms, they turned him into a joke. Ivory, Jazz, Just Incredible, which he was a big... Lance Storm, they could have pushed him for certain people. Mike Awesome, not really. He wasn't really all that. Even in ECW. Raven could have been something. Rhino could have been something because he could have been a good transitional for the WWE. They turned him into a jobber. RVD, yeah, they somewhat pushed him like that. Stacy Keibler, yeah, they pushed her as a sex kitten and whatever. Tess, he could have been something good. Tommy Dreamer could have been something good. He could have been a top baby face in WWE, which he wasn't. Paul Heyman, you know, he came out alright, looking alright. Chavo, Eddie, you know, Taz, he could have been something somewhat good. Him and Kurt Angle could have had some great matches together, but they didn't do it. I can go down a list of just what they could have did, and they could have generated. They could have generated some great. They could have kept wrestling at a stable 30 million for 15 or 20 years. But their bullshit literally chopped that all down to a good 10. And then eventually it started going down from 10 million to 5 million. 5, and then 3, and then easily, gradually went to like 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. That's it. Because everybody left because of the invasion angle. Triple H booking himself. It hurt everybody. It made everybody look bad. From Booker T, from somewhat Batista, from Randy Orton, him beating up everybody with the sledgehammer. Yeah, don't clarify it, man. Don't try to clarify it. Back in the day, when I was a young guy, Triple H was the dude. Time to play the game. All that, yeah, man. It's spitting in the air with the fucking, when we did it back in the day, spitting in the air with the water, and you do it like that. We did all that. But then when I grew up and kind of see what Triple H was doing, he wasn't that great of a wrestler. I went back and watched all his wrestlings, and I'm like, every single time he's winning. He has no weaknesses. He has no redemption. He has nothing. All he do is come in, lose, and then come in and win. The only thing that I invested in him recently, and that was when he versed against John Cena, because I wanted to see John Cena get his ass whipped. At WrestleMania, I forgot which WrestleMania that was. When he versed Triple H at WrestleMania, I forgot which WrestleMania that was. I paid for that WrestleMania for John Cena to get his ass whipped. And he won. And I said, okay, fuck this. I'm not playing for this shit anymore. So Triple H broken himself to be the top star, hurt uh uh WWE, and made a lot of people leave. Jeff Jarrett booking himself to be the best in TNA. That hurt early TNA. That was the terrible booking of him being king of the hill and him beating everybody and doing all that. He did the same thing Triple H did. But nobody talks about that. That the Bucks and the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega didn't take that approach. Cody did. The Young Bucks and Kenny, they didn't book themselves to be winning all the time. This is why they gave the belt to Chris Jericho. They were generous at their own disadvantage in AEW. They were losing. This wasn't a Kenny Omega and Young Bucks that we saw in New Japan. This is like, whoa, what's going on? Why these guys are losing like this? Because they was trying to build up a whole bunch of people. But a lot of people didn't like that because they like selfish people like themselves. And I remember Triple H and Jeff Jarrett booking themselves they was making everybody look bad. But hey, if you like wrestling like that, this is what happens. So let's see. Boom, 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 beep, beep, beep. Inconsistent storylines, inconsistent characters and storylines. So pretty much, you can't tell me a storyline that you watch that has longevity to it. You can't tell me. You can't tell me that Sasha Banks, from the time she was a face in NXT to the time she was a heel, that she should have just stayed a heel for most of her career, and she should have been a face, a situational face when it suit her, and then turn on the person that used her. Sasha Banks in NXT was booked very nicely. Why? Because Sasha Banks would have females on her side that she know could have been a threat to her, use them against other females in order to keep her reign successful. Sasha Banks and her gimmick was a generator for little girls and female fans. She had the boss title. She could have made millions and millions of dollars based off her being a boss. Meaning that you don't lose her. You group her up with new young women like they do in Stardom, and you let them grow in her stable, then get out of the stable and go on their own. She could have been a great person to generate young talent and have great storylines with. But they didn't do that. They made her a dipsy person who don't know how to hold on to a title, but made her a chaser instead of her being a title holder. But gave all these aberrations to Charlotte Flair because she's Ric Flair's daughter. So, how is somebody supposed to say that wrestling is good and you stupid idiots who walking around, because I'm using that just in case, you dumb idiots are going to talk about big guys and storylines and flips and dives and, oh, they doing too much in-ring action. But you're not going to talk about how they don't have consistent storylines at all. I can find 3 shows that have better consistency, even with bad writing, than WWE had in 5 years. Breaking Bad was a 5-year show. Well, 6 years if you count their part 2 of season 5. Sons of Anarchy season 7. Sons of Anarchy 7 seasons, 7 years. The Walking Dead 11 years. Every single body in that show had a peak and they had a decline. but they developed the character. So it means that your whole roster right now, from the experience they had from when they started in the company to now, supposed to have a spot that they're protecting, and they're in to help other talent and build other talent. And the people who view this product supposed to be glued on to this one person and say, okay, you booking him right. If that person is a loser, then at some point they were supposed to be a winner. Everybody's supposed to have their favorite wrestler in that roster. Not that everybody's all over the place. And the storylines, whew, they don't know what they're doing. But hey, investment is not worth it with characters and storyline. So, why would I invest in Dakota Kai when you didn't push Dakota Kai to win the belt? When you made Ragun Gonzalez to win the belt over Dakota Kai, when Raquel was supposed to be her backup, and was supposed to be her backup for almost 2 years. This is what happens when in decline of 2.1, NXT 1. 1.0, is their bookings start to be real bad and inconsistent because based off politics and whatever, right? When they had Ragun Gonzalez and Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair walk in the ring and put their titles up, all their reigns sucked. All of them. Bianca Belair lost to Becky Lynch, completely destroyed her credibility. Gonzalez had a bad reign, and Rhea Ripley had a non-nothing reign and got beat by Charlotte and ended up being in a tag team for couple years now with random people, being a tag team artist. I didn't like Rhea Ripley. The way they built her up, they should have kept her in the UK. Bianca Belair should have never been a champion at all. She needed more years to go. And with her attitude and style or whatever she has, I like some of her matches with Rhea Ripley. I mean, Shayna Baszler. But she wasn't ready for a title. She wasn't. She had to be built for like at least 3-4 years. That tag team title could have been put on her and another tag team artist to build herself up in a tag team and then feud with that person, and then she could have broke out. She had the athletic goals, but if they booked the whole thing right, her and Naomi could have had dream matches together. They could have had a rivalry together. So, none of it is worth investing. I invested in Naito back in the day when I found out Naito. I didn't know about Naito back in the day, but when I found out him like a couple years ago, I invested in him, and it was worth it. I'll tell you the number of people I try to invest in: Sasha Banks, Bray Wyatt, all the people in the Shield, which I didn't like none of them now. I don't like any of them now. Finn Balor, when he came to the WWE, AJ Styles. Well, I was invested in AJ Styles when he was in another promotion. Cesaro, that went nowhere. I can give you a name of like 20 wrestlers that I try to invest into, and they all. So why would I care about a wrestler and their storyline when I know they're not going to get any better down the line 3 years from now? Did Kevin Owens get better? I invested in him. Sami Zayn got better? Nope. Sami Zayn was the ultimate babyface, and what he's the ultimate joke. Kevin Owens is the ultimate heel. He could have been one of the most aggressive guys in WWE, despite his look. He could have been one of the most aggressive guys in WWE, being this kind of aggressive, dangerous guy to work with. And he could have been the shoot guy like, oh no, we don't want to verse against him. He take liberties on people. And he could have been one of the purveyors of hardcore matches, of one of these gimmick matches where he's slamming people and stuff and beating people up and stuff, and everybody want to get tough. Like, every wrestler should have a role to when new guys come in so they can create stars and creating better storylines. But it's the same old, same old. Stop and push, stop and push, stop, push and push. Inconsistent. Too much of wait and see. So you got these idiots who will see WWE do something and they say, I want to wait and see. I want to wait and see. 10 years later, I want to wait and see of what they're going to do with this guy. I want to wait and see. Oh, they dropped the ball with this guy. Oh, I'm so disappointed. Oh, let's wait and see. Let me wait and see. It's so stupid and dumb to have these people talk about AEW, but you're just waiting and seeing every single time for WWE to push this star, push that star, and push this star, and push that star. And you didn't learn that they don't know how to do any of that, but hey, somehow, some way, you're going to act like that WWE has been doing a bang-up job with all the talent. It's more like you are in a cult following more than AEW. AEW is a three-year company. While you've been watching WWE for almost more than a decade and you're still thinking that you're going to wait and see, your whole bullshit is just retarded. Like, I mean, it seems like some of you got special needs. Bad booking in matches. So, they like to do the fruit roll-ups, as everybody say, when wrestlers just roll people up. And dumb finishes and stupid stuff that they do all the time. They book people in the wrong manner. I just finished watching, I think in Stardom, Who was it? I forgot her name. Shit. Let me find her. They had a finish with two wrestlers in Stardom. And pretty much, they was in the tournament. They had a, what's it called? They didn't want to have the champion. She was a champion. She didn't lose. And the other one didn't lose. Because they booked both of them to be strong. I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is the funny part. WWE has more money and they bad booking overall. They always end the same. Their choreography is trash. You talking about flips and dives, but at least the flips and dives, even though it's sometimes it is annoying, and I do want them to stop with this false finish stuff, but at the same time, is WWE any better? Are you for real? People talked about how Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar was just hitting each other with the same moves in WrestleMania. Are you serious? And you can't say that I'm a indie mark because I like Robert Roode. I like Bobby Roode when he was in TNA. And I liked him when he was in NXT. Bobby Roode has ring psychology. And he's not a flip and die guy. I loved his matches when he was going against Shinsuke Nakamura. Oh, I forgot what his name. He went against somebody else. I loved his theme song. Glorious. It was great. And they dropped the ball with him. Could have been a great heel. He could have been a great champion. Being an arrogant champion? Depending on the casual market too much. This is what we have to worry about in gaming. Is that every single game is now a battle royale or play free to play or microtransaction because casuals took over gaming, right? And that's what they do with pro wrestling. We would see stupid storylines that we don't want to see, stupid innuendo and all this other crap that they put out there just to appease the casuals. And the casuals don't even watch they don't watch all wrestling. They don't watch none of it. So they'll come in and say, I didn't know who this guy is. I didn't watch that. So to me, as a movie goer, I would literally go back and watch certain actresses in certain shows and see how good they was in that show and how they was. And then I'll be like, okay, now I get why everybody says she's a good actress. That's the same shit with wrestling. You want to see who that person was, who that person is now, and why they not doing anything. It's more of a focus. It's not that hard. But the casual markets, when you cater towards them, what happens is that you lose the people who are actually going to pay and actually going to pay attention to your product and keep it going. Casual markets, they're just a bunch of adrenaline junkies, a bunch of muscle marks. And then when they don't get what they want, they leave and then they go online and making videos about AEW nerds. Rematches over and over and over again. So we had this drought in 2020 with pro wrestling. And it was horrible. We had no people in the crowd. We just saw we saw how different things. We saw just how important the crowd was when you're watching pro wrestling, because you feel the energy from the crowd and the match makes it better. But you see how choreographic that some of the matches was. No matter the flips and dives that you keep talking about, all these matches looked at cornball without the crowd. They look choreographic, and some of them look lazy because a lot of them didn't want to be here. They want to be at home, safe. They was wrestling in front of LED screens, and it was horrible. Every promotion, it was horrible. We lost Hannah Kimura during that stuff. I wish she was still wrestling, and if she was wrestling, she could have put that negativity towards her character, but she wasn't. So the casual market really don't care about it unless they just see somebody over and over again. And that's what happens with the rematches. You see rematches over and over again. There was a time when Ruby Riott, Liv Morgan, and the other chick, Sarah Logan, was versing Bayley and Sasha Banks week after week after week after week. And you wonder why people left. Brain dead fans who go with anything and everything. So these are the people who I'm going to show that everything that WWE put out, they go along with it. And when it doesn't go their plan, if it doesn't go their way, they will go to something new and blame the wrestler for not getting over. And then they'll go to something else and blame somebody else, but not just WWE, right? Nostalgia nut jobs. So these are people who constantly have to go back to the past. Talking about every old wrestling, pro wrestling. Oh my God, I want to go back in the old days. Worrying about the 90s, the early 2000s, and keep talking about old matches and keep talking about old this and old that and old this and old that and old this and old that. These guys don't even try to comb through all of pro wrestling and watch good wrestling matches that have unknown names and the indie scene and good wrestling matches and stuff. They don't care about that. They only care about WWE and talking shit about AEW and all talking about old wrestling matches. These dudes are living in the fucking past, but they want to sit here and talk about the future of people trying to sit back and keep the wrestling business alive. Because they're not. They going in the past. But these are the same people who wasn't paying for WWE Network. These nostalgia nuts was so stupid, they were getting free trials and doing all that. That's the reason why the WWE Network really wasn't making a lot. Wasn't doing that much. These so-called nostalgia nut jobs, that's what they are. Nostalgia marks. That's all they do is talk about the past. Past matches, past this and past that. The wokeness that we have in today's, from Keith Lee winning both titles because Black Lives Matter, 3 women winning belts, Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair and Ragun Gonzalez. One chick was edgy for the goth crowd. One chick was black for the black crowd, and one was for the Latino crowd. And all of them had shit runs, title runs, because of woke stuff. And these women resolution and all this other stuff, it ruined wrestling as well. It made people not want to watch wrestling like that. Going after AEW fans to feel good about themselves. So these are the pro wrestling fans that I'm going to go on to, and I'm going to show you their channels when they was not making AEW content. So, in order to feel good about themselves, they have to go after a bunch of people. I already broke this down in my other video about the guys who say they're better than you. And they kind of always have to tell you that they're better than you. Alright? These are the pro wrestling side. The pro wrestler guys who say they're better than you, and they going after AEW because a lot of them can't survive without talking down to a so-called fan base that they making fun of, right? So let's they have to feel good about themselves for watching a shit product all the time and being in nostalgia and not calling out WWE and their bullshit, but for some reason go after AEW at hard full force. And a lot of these guys are getting big views because they're going after AEW. And they want to be, this leader of, oh yeah, I'm tired of wrestling being this way and blah 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 blah. You didn't voice your opinion when WWE was trash. And we dealing with this on the gamer side too. Guys like Boeing to Game and all these other people who was talking crap. They're waiting for a bad game to come out so they can act like they're against this stuff. The young gigs and everything else. We have it in gaming. It's also in pro wrestling as well. These guys come out of nowhere and they get a lot of views based off the AEW hate train. So, milking WWE name for more money than it's worth, like GTA 5. So, WWE know that they don't have a good product. So what they are doing is selling off. They're selling off the WWE product to people who need not the viewing, who need it. Saudi Arabia need it for their image, so for them to pretend like they're gonna change their ways. So Saudi Arabia gave them, I think, $1 billion to pretend as a PR for a good PR for them to pretend like they're good people after they they executed that journalist. I'm not here to do the moral sound with the business companies because a lot of companies do some shady stuff, but that's part of the milking the WWE name. Also we have the Fox deal and the USA deal. Why you think the product has been pretty much trash? Because these companies don't care about. They really don't care about how the product is doing. They just care about small bit of ratings. Some of these networks, like a Fox or a USA Network didn't have a good show in like 5-6 years that can pull the numbers WWE numbers. It looks good on there. It looks good to bring in brain dead wrestling fans to sell them products on their network or to try to sell them shows for them to watch. It's a good strategy. That's why they have them. Fox, they need something to put on the slot. And I think after their deal is done, then Fox ain't gonna pick them up no more. I think Fox ain't gonna redo no deal because they didn't get anything new out of that deal. They just got a whole bunch of whatever. But WWE milked themselves just like GTA does. And people are sick of GTA being on every console for ever since 2013 for 9 years. People are sick of it. Just like people are sick of WWE not having any substance and real content to themselves and just selling their name off and pretending like they're bigger than what they are. Being a hypocrite saying that they don't need marks, but making a whole brand for marks with NXT 1.0. So, Triple H himself, a hypocrite, went around and grabbed every single independent star he can probably bring using Vince McMahon money. And he brung in a lot of indie guys. For indie fans to come in and support it. He pretty much destroyed Ring of Honor because he took their best people. He pretty much destroyed the UK scene, and he wanted to go after Japan, which I knew he would have failed because half of the people already was saying stuff like behind the scenes where Io Shirai and Kairi Sane, they pretty much, a lot of them was unhappy with their position. They were unhappy until Io turned heel, and Kairi Sane was just sick and tired of being jobbed out. That's why she went back to Stardom. Yeah, she got injured, but they welcomed her back with open arms. And they booked her right, and she stopped doing that whole screaming and yelling in the ring. In Stardom, she doesn't do that. But basically, Triple H went against the marks, and then decided that he knew the marks was a good market to stay in because marks don't leave when you don't do what they don't want you to do. They try to stay in a position of trying to see if something gonna change in 3 years. You can keep the marks, or the so-called match marks and all that, you can keep them going for 3 years. And then eventually they will leave and they won't come back. And that's what happened with NXT. It used to be a good thing until they went on the USA Network. And then they had 3 years to try to put things back. The Karrion Kross and the Keith Lees and all that, they destroyed their whole brand. They destroyed it. Karrion Kross, Adam Cole was absolutely right. Without your smoke, without your girl, you're nothing. And look what happened to him. He got exposed. Keith Lee, all he was a big giant guy flipping. That's all. I was never a fan of Keith Lee. At all. But they decided that they want to go after the same market that they talked about. And Triple H knew that he could draw in them because they are more loyal than the casuals. The Speak Out movement. Whoo-wee! What can I say? From Nash Carter, which I didn't watch, from I forgot his name. It was a lot of people that these females destroyed in this Speaking Out movement. Velveteen Dream was a prospect to the Speaking Out movement. Enzo was a kind of a good tag team wrestler. Speaking Out movement. But you want to blame AEW, what you ain't gonna blame the Speak Out movement and all these women who literally destroyed a whole bunch of men's career just to be in positions in wrestling, and they pretty much don't draw a dime. Taylor Hicks don't draw a dime. Gigi Dolan don't draw a dime when she talked against Darby Allin. Half of the people who talk trash about, they don't draw anything. So this is just for the women to just shit on the men and kick them all out. And then now we have a bunch of untalented people that, what? We gotta wait and see? Musclehead marks who think everybody should be 8 feet tall with 40-inch arms. Like, that's really a healthy thing to walk around. See, one of these dudes don't talk about that is that this is the reason why a lot of these dudes get injured a lot. Muscle tears and all this other stuff, and muscle tears and basically, had you ever looked at Mr. Olympian? I forgot his name. Michael Ron, whatever his name is. The dude that used to powerlift and he used to be big. He could barely walk. Why? Because he did too much powerlifting and he put too much stuff in his body, and he kept his body at a heavy muscle weight instead of giving himself rest. What they don't tell you is that a lot of bodybuilders and powerlifters slim down and they go back to a weight that they can walk in. Having that muscle all the time, it's hard on your body to the point where you're going to be looking and walking around like an old man. I remember when I was a big behind dude, younger, and I had an 80-year-old walk. Sometimes it wouldn't stay there. It's because I was lifting every single day just to keep this appropriate weight up and just to keep this appropriate size. They don't talk about that. That's the reason why a lot of these dudes is dropping like flies. Because they was trying to perform and keep themselves up, trying to compete. And they were hurting people. But nobody want to talk about that, right? Too many people who want things but don't support anything. So, these are the people who don't go out and buy anything, but they want to go around talking trash about marks who actually support the products that they like. So these are the people who do things on the other side, but then turn around and talk about AEW this and AEW that and AEW this and AEW that, and like, hey, are you serious right now? You're sitting here talking about AEW when you don't even pay for your wrestling. But I'm supposed to believe that you care about the wrestling community. Sure. Pushing the same guys over and over again. So these are the people who are never going to call out WWE for pushing the same old guys over and over and over and over and over again. They're not going to talk about that. They're going to sit there and act like it's not happening. Oh, this, they're not doing that. That's not how that goes. That's not how they're doing it. They're not doing that. Wait. You telling me they're not pushing the same guys over and over again? Charlotte Flair, Roman Reigns, John Cena, Brock Lesnar. They don't even have a good roster. I mean, Seth Rollins. I mean, who was the newest person who ever got a title shot or a new title reign that wasn't part of the company for over a decade? Please tell me. Any new wrestler, any new person on there? Huh, yeah, you can't tell me. The treatment of better built wrestlers from other promotions. So they don't have a good track record like other companies do, right? Minoru Suzuki can go into every single company and be treated like he's Minoru Suzuki from New Japan. Switchblade, Jay White can come from every single company and he can be promoted he's from New Japan. There's stars who comes from certain other companies and they are treated like they're from the other company. The company don't take liberties to job out another person's promotion. They take an appropriate wrestler, make them learn from them being with them in that ring, and then they put them to a better person. WWE, they don't take that momentum from a former wrestler from another company and take their fan base from the company to go to WWE and add on to the WWE roster. They bad at execution. This is what they did with the WWE invasion angle. They shit the bed for that and lost about 25 million people. Stopped watching pro wrestling after they shit the bed from that. Bring up the numbers. Please, bring up the numbers. After that, after all that stuff, it was gradually going down from 15 million, at least 15 million, until it just started dropping. When you could have had a good solid 35 million or 30 million people watching if they would have did what they were supposed to do. Insecure wrestling fans. Wrestling doing other things outside the wrestling. Wrestlers doing other things outside of wrestling. So you have a lot of people who, in wrestling, to just be a movie star. You have too many people who don't want to put at least a 7-year career. At least I say a 7-year career in wrestling and then bounce and do something else. No, they come in trying to do 3 years, 4 years, and then try to be an actor or actress or a music star. They come in here just to use wrestling as a platform. And now you have these Eva Marie's who pretty much left, and all these idiots who are sitting there talking about how Eva Marie was a heel, or Bella Twins, who was reality stars, not real wrestlers. They didn't learn anything from fitness models who just wanted to just pose and do all this. Fake singers, glamour models, or women who came into business just to get a boyfriend and have fun with pro wrestlers and then leave the pro wrestling slyly and go somewhere else. From Rock, John Cena, Batista, even Hulk Hogan to an extent, all wanted to do something else. But they put their years in it. I respect all of them. You put 10 years in the business, you develop so many stars. Hey, brother, you can go do what you do. John Cena? No. You need to put a couple more years, put a couple people more over. You need a heel run. Then you can go out and do your movie star. But I kind of understand his position. He didn't want to be under Vince McMahon anymore. And this all goes back to WWE and them wanting to get away from Vince McMahon and do all their stuff. Just like Triple H wanted to get from under Vince McMahon and go to NXT. Until Vince McMahon went over and destroyed it. Insecure wrestling fans afraid of judgments of being a wrestling fan. So you got little punks who are afraid that their friends are going to talk about them because they like pro wrestling. I'm embarrassed to be a pro wrestling fan. I don't want... You a grown-ass fucking man who are afraid of other people's opinion, but you'll say you're an alpha male? If you don't like me, and I say this shit to people's face, you don't like me for what I do, you can step out of my life right now. I said just like that. I don't like what you like. And if I come at you and say I don't like the music, what you gonna do? You ain't gonna be my friend anymore, right? So don't talk about something that I don't enjoy, and I'm not gonna talk about something you enjoy. We just don't have to talk about it. I stand on my square. But hey, you got these little weasels, weak weasel wrestling fans who, I don't want to share that I like pro wrestling because pro wrestling is embarrassing. Like we all in high school or some college stuff. These are grown-ass men, 37-year-old men who have kids or a family or a girlfriend, and you care about what strangers say about you liking your interest and your hobby? What are we in the 90s again? So, let me go to... Wow, it's an hour. Woo! That's I ain't want that to be that long, but hey. So, let's see. AEW channels who walk around talk about AEW. So,
Google Fi, a phone plan by Google. With our flexible plan, only pay for the data you use, down to the...
So this dude, he pretends like he a wrestling fan, but he never was actually a wrestling fan. This was his first video, pretty much in 2020. He created his channel in order to go after AEW. Now, look at his views. His views are 116 views. Now, this is somebody who has a big channel. This is a dude who think he's going to be Mr. Olympian, which he's not. So, this is what I'm talking about when I tell you about black men who think they're better than you, and they go into a community of people who they think they're better than and talk shit about. Now, this dude thinks that he's some kind of big shot because he goes to the gym and work out when there's millions of jarheads just like him. There's farm boys that I know that lift heavier than him without being in bodybuilder. So, he tries to brag about him being pro wrestling, even though his first video was sports. So this is all his videos. As you see, it's going against the AEW narrative and appealing to the cult-like following WWE has. But if you go further back, a year ago, his views was absolutely in the shit. So, let's talk about when he started he started going after marks. This a year ago. He wasn't getting traction. He wasn't getting attraction at all until he go after certain wrestlers. His bodybuilding don't get a lot of views, but it got much views. But look, his bodybuilding don't get a lot of views. When he talks about storylines, WWE, he don't say anything. Now his views start to go up when he talks about people that nobody likes. CM Punk is not a draw. Now, when he go after people, it's go ups and down. But when he go after AEW only, his views are consistent in the thousands. But when he go after sports, his views drop. AEW, 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 AEW's trashing AEW, trashing AEW, trashing AEW. This is what he does. So, we expose this guy. And then here goes the so-called Millennium Mark, who has a channel that he had since 2014. But, let's see his video catalog before he talked about AEW. Now, I'm going to give you this right here. Because I can do this for most of the AEW haters. And you can go back on their channels and watch their views be in the shitter before they talk about AEW. And their whole channel is dedicated to talking about AEW and talking about marks. This was one of the people that I was talking about when I say that they're living in the past. So, let's go to his video catalog. This is 2000.
Hi, everyone.
This is 2019. Mind you, he's not talking about the current product of 2019. He's talking about a past product. And he continued to do this over and over and over again until he found AEW. But he didn't gain any steam until he started talking more bad about AEW when AEW became more prevalent. Now, as you see the numbers, they don't get up there. They don't go up there yet. He had to work for his views. Then, he started having he started having little thumbnails. And here he goes on his high horse, talking trash about AEW, talking trash about other wrestlers and stuff. And then eventually he break out of that small, but he still can't get out of there. Then here he goes. But he's still struggling. And this is when he was talking about WWE only. He wasn't getting the views that he wanted. So, what he had to do is go from talking about WWE, like he was doing, because he don't really say a lot of bad things about WWE. See, his WWE content wasn't getting nothing. But AEW, his highest view in multiple videos where AEW women effing sucks. So he wasn't seeing any type of rise up in his videos. But when he go after AEW, here we go. Now, he started joining certain people's sides. Now he got his biggest viewership ever. Talking about AEW. I don't have to say nothing anymore. I proved my point on the list that I made. These guys are only relevant because they don't like AEW and they're on the side of the other side of anti-AEW guys. But then you see their viewership and you see just how it changes when they talk about AEW. As you see, I don't need to lie. They do, but I don't. Look, 16,000 out of all these low-ass numbers. Then, he goes after AEW again. Not as big, but then he start going after AEW again. And then, Ryback, Brody Lee. Then he start going after dead wrestlers being overrated. Then, his consistency against AEW. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Consists of 1,000 or above 1,000 views. And here we go again. Talking about marks. Consistent views. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then WWE Lazy would be is deaf. But they don't want to hear this. When he talks about WWE. And he get it. When they talk about WWE, they don't want to hear it. Guess what? Every time he talk about AEW, he gets it. He gets more views. So, as I said, these anti-AEW fanboys, these anti-AEW guys, they're doing it because they never actually had a following when they was talking about WWE. They don't care about pro wrestling. They only care about the views they're getting from talking about people who have a fan base. And they're not legitimate. They're probably some of the worst grifters that you probably ever can see in a pro wrestling community ever. AEW fans can get out of hand. But these dudes, what they're about, they're only here to pick on someone they feel they're better than. And then pretend like they're not doing what they're doing. And they're trying to make AEW fans look like the bad guys. Until being grouped in with a whole bunch of WWE extremists who can't leave WWE alone, but somehow, some way, talk about AEW. So I hope y'all understand this whole video about me exposing all the AEW YouTube channels and videos. All they want is more views and to stand on top of a mountain thinking they're better than everybody else. Because why would you go after a fan base who you said don't like you or whatever, and continue to keep talking about them? But when you talk about the WWE, the greatest company in the world, you don't get no views. And if you didn't care about the views, you would go back to what you really do. The AEW should have been going. I can get views. Trust me. All I had to do was talk about current topics and all this other crap. I have like some of my videos that got 2,000 that I didn't know that I had on there was talking about certain manosphere topics. I can talk about celebrity gossip and all this other stuff. I'm not going to do it. Because I really do want to get through to certain groups of people. But these people who are going around talking trash about AEW, what they want is them to feel better about their position in life and their position in the wrestling community. They want to have a bigger voice than all these other people. And they want to go after people because they want to feel good about themselves. It's an ego thing. So yeah, man.